Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Christina Langell, and with me today is our Pennsylvania editor, Kristen Smith. Kristen, there's finally been some big movement on the Nippon and U.S. Steel deal. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening and what's happening next?
Yeah, over the last week, we've had a huge development in the sense that Donald Trump has changed his mind since he was on the campaign trail, and he believes that U.S. Steel's new partnership, as he calls it, with Nippon Steel, which is based in Japan, that this is the best way forward for America. He has put his stamp of approval on it, meaning that the government will no longer block the sale as they did under the Biden administration. What that means practically is multi-billion-dollar investments in steel mills in southwestern Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh, $5,000 bonuses for workers, and most importantly for people, the assurance that U.S. Steel will remain a Pennsylvania company. It'll stay headquartered in Pittsburgh. And then that threat and that fear that it wasn't going to is gone now. So it was a very celebratory day Friday when President Trump went to West Mifflin, Pennsylvania to celebrate this at one of their plants. And there was a very interesting group of people there. You had obviously the president, many Republican congressional lawmakers, you had state lawmakers, you had a lot of steel workers there too, who were, you would think of all people, the most worried about perhaps losing their jobs to non-unionized states or some of the other concerns that had been brought up over the deal in the past. They were just thrilled that U.S. Steel was staying put and that Nippon was willing to invest in them to bring them into the future to meet certain climate action goals and things like that that are really making it hard to succeed in the steel industry right now.
And what have you heard from outside of those leaders who are there to celebrate? What have other people who have, had a significant stake in this conversation said about the deal?
There's still a lot of skepticism. Certainly, the United Steelworkers Union, their leadership at the international level and up has been very vocal against this deal because they've been concerned all along that Nippon wouldn't hold up to their end of the bargain and that they would close down facilities in Pennsylvania and that they would just move operations south to avoid collective bargaining agreements. There is a U.S. Steel plant in Arkansas that we actually lost because of slow permitting in Pennsylvania, and particularly in Allegheny County. So that was that job or that project, and 900 jobs that were six-figure jobs were moved to Arkansas. And so Pennsylvania really doesn't want to see that again. The United Steelworkers Union thought that was going to happen if Nippon was allowed in. They wanted U.S. Steel to remain domestically owned and operated. There was a domestic bidder who came in a few months before Nippon and offered to buy U.S. Steel for about half the price. That was Cleveland-Cliffs in Ohio. But critics of that deal said that, Cleveland-Cliffs couldn't afford to invest in U.S. Steel in the way that they needed to upgrade their facilities and to keep their jobs here. But also, Cleveland-Cliffs itself has other steel mills that they've had to reduce jobs on and production because of tariffs and all these other things that are happening economically speaking. So they're not, as of this new deal, which has been said to increase investments from Nippon, although it's not entirely clear how much and what, but increase nonetheless. They still haven't changed their mind. They don't think that it's any better than it was 6 months ago when Biden blocked it. And they're not convinced that it was the right deal for workers.
And for national security. So that was another one of the discussions that people had. I know the president said no more shoddy steel from Shanghai. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how is it looking for the national security picture? That was one of the concerns raised.
So yes, no more shoddy steel from Shanghai, which you know how he loves his alliteration. So that was another Trumpism for sure. But the concern all along, and this is one that Biden shared, was that if we were to let an international competitor take U.S. Steel over, that would continue to elevate the unfair trade practices that are happening on the foreign steel market. Namely, that China is flooding the market with really cheap, inferior product, which drives the price of U.S. steel up and makes it a commodity that no one wants to buy, and further, leading to its decline. So also, there was concern about having one of our biggest international competitors, economically speaking, being not the sole producer, but a main producer of things like steel and aluminum and all these products that are really vital to providing national defense in America. So Biden didn't want Nippon, which is a Japanese company to be sure, not Chinese. He didn't want them to take over because he felt that this would make the problem worse, not better. And Trump was kind of on that same page, but also he didn't like the idea of U.S. Steel not being U.S. Steel. He thought that merging with Nippon would it would lose its domestic ownership, and it would it would go very much against his desired policy of America first and making America great again, to give up one of our historical steel manufacturing companies to Nippon. So what's happened here is that Trump is saying that because it's now a partnership, which again, not entirely sure what that definition is, but it's going to be as American as it can be, is how it's been described to me, in that, Americans will stay on the board and have majority control, but that Nippon will make the investments and therefore benefit from those investments in the company. And because of those boosted investments, it's actually going to be better for the workers there. It's going to save jobs. It's going to create more jobs down the line. So that's where his turn has been. He's saying, from a national security perspective, this makes it so that U.S. Steel does stay in Pennsylvania, does stay in America. The production here is increased and the value is increased, and it's actually going to hurt China's chances of undercutting our products, not making it, not emboldening them to say.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it evolves with the new merger in place. Thank you, Kristen. We'll be following this story and more at thecentersquare.com/Pennsylvania.